There it goes. It disappeared. That was kind of strange, wasn't it? Yeah,
Yep.
I think we got an interesting show tonight. First, I want to let everybody know we are totally listener supported, and if you got a buck or two, we'd sure appreciate it. Come check out the homepage. It's a little late for buying seeds for planting this year, but you can always plan for next year. Check out the seed options there on the homepage. How you doing this evening, Mark?
Just fine. Do
Just
you, do,
fine.
do
You
you,
get
do you have a,
some of that mess cleaned up?
it's getting there. I've had a, growing pile of stuff that's going to have to go to the landfill this week, but it's
Mark
uh,
showed me pictures of it. He had a river in his front yard.
yeah, and it got diverted through the basement. So, but yeah, I've gone through a lot of sham wows, and it's about cleaned up now. It's just hauling stuff to the landfill, and uh, it's getting there. It's just sad to see you know losing some of the clothes and the albums that helped to get me through college and all that stuff's gone. But
Oh man, you lost a bunch of albums.
yeah, but it's we'll move forward.
I hear that. We got a heck of a show tonight. I think I was contacted by Joanna Summerscales about a book that just recently come out that she helped co-author. She runs the UK's #1 platform providing experiencers with a place for voice and interviews and reporting on issues and stuff in the UK. And I thought that what I read about it was intriguing and thought we needed to have her on and talk to Mark about it. And he thought it made a good show too. So we
I
brought her
yeah,
on.
I have to agree with you, Thomas, on that one. I think we need Joanna on. So
That's handy, guys.
yeah, we agree on that. So let's bring her on.
Yeah. Now, this book stems from you having the website. Did you meet this experiencer on your website? Did they come to you or?
Yeah, hi, good evening, folks. Yeah, you know what? I started a MASH, which became known as the MASH Project. Just as a quick, brief background of how all this has kind of worked out. And AMASH stands for Anomalous Mind Management, because there's always mind control aspects to whatever these folks go through. Abductee Contactee Helpline, because I provide a UK mobile number for people to have a direct line if they want to speak privately or confidentially or even publicly if they want to go on camera or radio with me. They can do that. But otherwise, people can contact me on the website. But things have changed. I started MASH in 2011, and it was really essentially to kind of fill a vacuum that exists, especially in the UK, where there wasn't really anything experience of focus. Now, there are groups here and there and that kind of thing, but there was nothing sort of that addressed it in a wider level. So that's what I was trying to provide. And in fact, not only did I have quite a lot of people from the UK, but actually all over the world, which I was really surprised at, because it was also America and Canada too. So anyway, it made for a very interesting 5 years. Now, the MASH website kept getting hacked really badly, and they finally killed it, whoever they were, last November, December. So because it was beginning to pollute the airwaves with whatever people were doing to it, I decided to pull it and regroup, essentially. So the AMASH website is no longer, and AMASH is no longer, but I've started regrouped, if you like, under the banner of the ET Newsroom. And there is a website, the etnewsroom.com. That is under construction, but there is a contact page there that functions as far as I know at the moment. And if anybody's in the UK, there's the telephone number there. And of course, there's Skype and all the other social media areas to connect with. So Bill Brooks and I have written this book, which is his story. Now, everybody's got an amazing story. And I honestly think that you experiencers out there who come forward and speak to people like me, well done and congratulations. And thank you for sharing, because not only is it a privilege to gain your trust, but also that you share this really important information with the wider world. And we're just looking at ways to get this stuff out there and this material, because I just think it's like a dam waiting to burst, and that some aspect of the experiencer ET interaction is going to be a key core part to be played out in times to come, and maybe not that far distant, to do with how humanity continues to evolve in some more positive direction. So the book that I wrote with Bill, and the reason I wrote it is because in 2012 he'd had a heck of a life, and he suffered a series of heart attacks and strokes all within a week. Really didn't expect to live. He's actually just made his 66th birthday and was very surprised to have even finished the book. And he was due to be on with me this evening, but he is having heart issue problems again. So he's really gone to rest. He's in a bit of a state. So just please send your thoughts out to Bill, if you will, folks, because he's a great guy.
So some healing energy out that way.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm real interested in this because just what you sent me about the press release is pretty awesome. I apologize if one of us hadn't read the book. Usually Mark reads the books before we.
Listen, it's only just out there, so
yeah, and that was the thing. It was just out there. We hadn't had much time, and we had this slot open.
Joanna,
appreciate you joining us tonight.
It's great. No, thank you for the invite.
Since the book just hit the bookshelves, let's just talk about what's the name of the book. It's
44. Well, it's actually out there on Amazon and Kindle. We did it through CreateSpace because we just. The publishers, they didn't know where to put this kind of material because it encompasses a lot of things. So it's a long title, but it starts off as 44, and I'll tell you why the number 44 in a moment, based on an ex-soldier's true story of lifelong encounters involving alien abduction, men in black, serial killer, and persecution by the Masons. And I may have left one out, but I'm going kind of word blind at the moment. Anyway, so that's the title of the book, and you can easily source it if you just put in 44 and Bill Brooks, Joanna Summerscales, or the ex-soldier's true story. Now, it is actually a true story. When we've put based, Bill has been through a lot of issues and traumas regarding Freemasons as well. And he has a son, and he just wanted a little bit of wiggle room, if you like, wiggle room to provide a little movement in case there were any issues surrounding what has come out through his story. Because one of the things that is most extraordinary about Bill's story is that he was a rootin' tootin' guy. He was into wine, women, and song, like any healthy person of the male gender. And he really had no interest in this subject whatsoever. I mean, he'd have thought people like me, as he put it once, were complete Fruit Loops nutcases. And I have to admit, I love his honesty. He's got this great earthy sense of humor. And he's from an area in the West Midlands of England near a place called Stourbridge, which in fact is just about around the corner where Robert Plant is from. And in fact, too, he had a couple of major experiences as a child. He's a couple of years, I think, or so younger than Robert Plant. And he had a couple of experiences right almost in Robert Plant's backyard. He was just in the big field where just over the back from where Robert Plant lived. So some really interesting things that have come out of the book. But I say, just getting back to the 44 part of the title, he didn't believe in anything to do with ETs, UFOs, nothing at all. And that's how his life would have stayed because he was completely unconscious to any interaction at all that had happened to him. And in fact, at age 44, he had what he calls a download. And you can best describe it like an NDE, like a near-death experience, in terms of how it operated. It sort of played out to him unprovoked, unexpected, as this whole film of his life being shown before him, just as you often hear of near-death experience people, experiences reporting. And he knew then, without a shadow of a doubt, that he'd been an alien abductee all his life. The first experience starting when he was between 2 and 3, and then continuing through. But this business of being 44, so he's 66 now, and so it's 2/3 of his life has been lived in one part unconsciously. And when you think about that, that's a heck of a thing to encompass, because it doesn't imply anything to do with the intellect or the personality of the person. They were just completely locked out of a certain portion of their consciousness. And because of his frame of mind, i.e. that he really didn't go for this material. He just really honestly thought it was the realm of delusion and, mental health issues. But when he knew that that wasn't the case, and that he, in fact, was an experiencer, that really absolutely knocked him through a hoop and really sent him into a tailspin, because, how do you deal with that? Who do you talk to? And this was a massive issue for him, because when he came to know about this, he just had a young son. His son was about 8 or 9 months old, and his life was entirely different instantly. And of course, it's different for everybody around him too, because he's suddenly somebody else. And this is a very interesting part. This is these stories, these testimonies, as far as I'm concerned, are really important social documents, because whilst we have put based on a true story, really for safety for Bill, it is true as far as he recalls. As he said, it's true. He said, if I've got anything wrong, it's not because I'm lying, it's just because that's what I remember. And I worked with him for nearly 4 years, as I said, drawing this story out of him. And as we've worked, from time to time, there have been memories that have opened up a little bit more, given a bit more information. And sometimes it's absolutely knocked him through a hoop again, and he's had to stop work for sometimes weeks, because it's just rocked his foundations again. And I'm not an experiencer myself. I come from media background in theatre. I did training there. And I'm a therapist, passionately interested in alternative health modalities, all of that. And I've done regression work, energy work, sort of quantum field energy work, dealing with clearing unhelpful patterns, let's say. So he has had nothing to fall back on. For me, I'm used to delving in and going into this, and although I'm not an experiencer, it is the most incredible story when you walk shoulder to shoulder with someone through their incredible history. And of course, then that brings you to the concept of consciousness and what is that. And as a friend of mine was saying today, and what does happen when these folks die? What do experiencers think happens? And I always remember in that crazy film, Paul, with the ET, when he gets knocked unconscious and they're shouting at him, whatever you do, don't go into the light, don't go into the light. And I bring that up because, our culture develops in a particular way through, development of these memes and then evidences and what have you. And we don't actually really know, although people have come back and told their stories, and Bill indeed has come back, but he didn't have any memory of when he died for a short time. He actually died for a short time, not only when he was a child, but also as in 2014, I just started my own radio show, The Amash Files, and I had him on as my late deceased guest. And he'd had a massive heart attack and was resuscitated amazingly just because the paramedic happened to have the defib kit in his own car and not the company car. So the guy's meant to be around for a bit longer. So I really do hope he will be. So this story then just takes us into so many pathways. So I don't know what the answer is to my friend's question about what do experiencers think happens when they die, because we hear a lot about soul catching and soul trading and all that kind of thing. But I don't want to get too far down that route before we get back into the story of Bill, because there are so many components to his story that are just mind-boggling. And you wonder how one person who's only 66 can possibly have gone through so much. So he actually had all his experiences, bar one, have been, let's call them abduction, for want of a better term, abduction, alien abduction. And there has been some military involvement, which I'll go over in a bit. But the first experience that he had as a full contact was when he was only 10 years old. So this is 1960. And he didn't go to school. He was from a very poor background. And as he said, he didn't really know because everybody was poor and everybody just pulled together. So it was that kind of environment. And he was a bit of a rough and tough kid because it was a rough and tough environment. But he couldn't really take too much of it. And he'd got a severely disabled, physically disabled brother whom his mother, after the hospital had suggested she just let him die, refused that and insisted that her son have any kind of life that she could give him. She was always at the hospital with him. So it was Bill's job then to take his little sister, who's another 2-3 years younger than him, to school and pick her up. And in the meantime, back in those days, if you didn't go to school, it wasn't really a big deal like it is today. In the UK, you get fined and you can go to prison and God knows whatever it is. Really hard job these days to be a parent. But anyway, so he would go off into nature. He'd go off into this wonderful big field. Now, I actually did a field trip with Bill in 2014 to the major locations of where these events happen. So I went to the field that is now a place where dog walkers go and people walk through, and you'd never know it was once a field full of corn crop. But this is also the location where Robert Plant's house was. And when I went there, it was amazing because Bill was telling me that it in those days, it was actually a really not remote as in out of the way, but a remote place in it as much as people just didn't frequent it. So he would hardly ever see anybody there. So essentially, he had the entire place to himself and they grew corn crop there. Since this next incident I'm about to tell you happened, they never grew another crop and just left it to grow to grass, which is really interesting. And I wonder why. So 10-year-old Bill, he's dropped his sister off at school. He's got a new bike and he's ridden that over to the gate where he leaves it whilst he tramps off into the corn crop where his dad is always saying, do not lie down and make a bed for yourself in the crop. He said, what if a combine harvester comes? You'll be killed. Well, boys will be boys, so he didn't care. He just thought he'd be able to scoot out the way pretty fast if anything happened. So anyway, he made his little bed as usual in the corn crop and just was having a wonderful time gazing up, making pictures out of the clouds, when suddenly he saw this huge sphere. It was about 7 or 8 foot in diameter, he reckoned. And it was only about 8 or so foot above him as well. Now, because he was a nature boy, he was very cognizant of the weather conditions. So he already noticed that there was no breeze. So how come this thing was moving? It was moving pretty fast and spinning at the same time. Now, as kids, they would do a little game where they'd blow up a balloon And they would write on the balloon and send the balloons off saying, if you find this balloon, please send me a letter or whatever. It was like a little game that they did back then. Anyway, so it put him in mind, but he thought, my God, these balloons are so huge, because it wasn't just one. Suddenly there was one, and then suddenly there were two. And these began sort of this dance around each other, spinning around each other, spinning here and there all over the field until he lost sight of them, at which point he stood up. And he's only a small person now, so he must have been a very small child at 10 years old. And all of a sudden, he found himself in a massive crop circle, which he couldn't see from the perspective of being of lying down. So I've never heard of anyone ever being in a crop circle as it's been made at all before. So this is the first instance. And of course, back in 1960, I don't know if people knew what crop circles were. I know they've been reported since many, many years and centuries before, but they didn't call them crop circles. And I really don't know if in 1960 in the UK, there were really crop circles being reported much. I haven't heard about it, and I haven't researched that bit. But anyway, so that was pretty astonishing, because it was a big field and it's a big crop circle. And then he'd noticed in the far distance a vehicle. Now, back in those days, I mean, this little guy hadn't seen much in the way of books. He couldn't read or write either. And there weren't many cars or vehicles around at that time in that location. So he hadn't got much to reference anything to, but he had seen a book of some unusual vehicles which were used for land speed record holding. And there was a guy in the UK called Donald Campbell who sadly lost his life to one of these events where he was trying for various speed records on water and on land. And he had a vehicle called Bluebird, and it's a very specific looking vehicle. And he looked over at this vehicle and thought, gosh, that looks like Donald Campbell's Bluebird. Anyway, with that, he saw a party of 4 walking toward him. Now, Bill's a very friendly guy, and he wasn't frightened. It's not like today where you might worry about your kids being out in a field by themselves and approached by 4 strangers. The strangers appeared to be tall. We might call them Nordics today, or any other kind of blonde Nordic-looking persons. And it looked like a family group, sort of mum, dad, and 2 smaller ones, although they were taller than he was. And as they approached him, they seemed a little bit anxious. Now, this is one of the memories that came back when we were working with Bill. He said, do you know, I've suddenly got a memory of them looking around, looking a little bit anxious, and then asking me if I'd seen any reptilians or reptiles. He said, I can't even remember how they couched that phrase. He said, but I didn't know what that was. He said, so I must have said no, to which they seemed to have relaxed. And then they also made a very unusual statement. They said something along the lines, now I may get this wrong because I haven't got it in front of me, but it's something along the lines of that they had broken away from those who would have made them slaves, which is really interesting. The actual quote is in the book. But that is an astonishing statement, because Bill doesn't speak in these kind of terms or in this way. And he'd actually made a note of the phrase, the absolute phrase, on a song sheet. He's a musician as well. And he found it when we were doing some work and research together for the book, which is really interesting. And then he said, I know that we had more conversation, but I don't remember all of it. And he said, I remember asking them if they were from God. Oh, that's really sweet. Or he'd asked them where they came from, and they pointed to the sky, and they said, and he said, were they from God? And they said, no, that's something on your planet, a concept on your planet, and we can't comment, which I also thought was absolutely fascinating. Now, Bill says at this point, that he'd been to the cinema at some point and he'd seen Flash Gordon and believed every single bit of it. So there was nothing unusual for him. He really didn't think anything of it, that these 4 people in one-piece fitting suits, which were extremely unusual in those days as garb, was anything other than a friendly interaction. So these people also told him that the earth was in trouble. And this is a really common theme with experiencers as well. They didn't tell him what it was that was the trouble with the earth, but they said also, if he could help, would he? And an excited 10-year-old Bill said, yes, what do you want me to do? And they said, well, you'll know at the time. But they did give a caveat, and they said, if you do help, you will be hated before you die. And that too has been the case for various reasons, which we may or may not get chance to get into, which is really fascinating. So that said, that done, they asked him if he'd like to go for a ride, and what boy wouldn't? Now, he didn't think anything about danger. It was all very natural, very nice. They were very friendly. Nothing was alarming to him. And he said, I don't even remember how they spoke. He said, I assume they used their mouths because otherwise I would have noticed. Because, of course, I asked him if it was telepathic. But anyway, he said, I don't remember them speaking to one another, but they did speak to me, as far as he recalled. So they go into the ship where Mum and Dad, let's call them, left him with the 2 children who are in another room, and there's these small spheres, small globes, if you like a small beach ball. And they're floating in the air, and the 2 other children are making them float. And then he sits down, and there's one on the floor of these globes or spheres, and he picks it up, puts it on his lap, and one of the children says to him, well, you do it. You make it move with your mind. You can do it. And he said, I did. He said, but I don't believe that I really did. He said, because I can't do it now. I can't do it on Earth. So he said, I think that they did it for me to make me think that I could do it. So that's, again, really interesting, because you do hear of children going on board, and there's often this working with the mind to create levitation effects, that kind of thing. So he had that experience, and then Mum and Dad, or Mum came to get him and took him into another room. And there was a sort of 3.5 foot tall plinth on which there was a kind of either glass or perspex covering, a little bit like a very large cake dome. And inside the bit that you could see, because the bottom 3.5 foot area was opaque, more or less, as I remember. But inside the top bit was something that looks like an old-fashioned child's spinning top. And Dad, who, they were fairly tall, these folks, they were over 6 foot, not massive, but maybe 6'2" or 3", Bill thinks. And this would have brought the plinth with this other cake dome, which is about another perhaps 1.5 foot tall, made it about a 5.5 foot structural tall. So he said Dad was actually looking down on it, looking into this spinning top. It wasn't a vast thing, but he said there were lights that seemed to be moving up and down and around it as well. And he said this spinning top began rotating, moving, and Dad started talking about revolutions. Well, little Bill didn't know what a revolution was in terms of motion. So Dad must have explained, and it kept phasing, or it began phasing in and out of visibility. And then I think Dad explained a little bit further that when it went completely invisible, the ship would take off, which is exactly what happened. And he remembers seeing Earth receding at a rate of knots through a round window. And then as they got on with their journey, he saw a look of concern from the mum to the dad. And she looked back and said, we can't take you any further. And with that, suddenly the Earth is back in view. And he said, I don't remember any other conversation much. He said, I remember now coming off the craft. And he said, I look back and I said, will I see you again? And they said, just keep looking to the clouds. And he's always remembered that, because he's seen quite a lot of things in the clouds that we might think are of his craft. And with that, he left because now he's suddenly aware of the time. It's time to pick up his little sister from school, and he can't be late for that. So he rushes off to get his bike. He doesn't even think to say goodbye properly to these guys, and he just gives them one more glance around, and they've already gone. So anyway, he's about trying to find his bike because suddenly his bike is not where he left it. Oh, hi, guys. We've got Bill joining us. Do you want me to add him to the group?
You can't. He has to add me, and I can pull him out.
Oh, okay. Well, I tell you what. It's continuing.
Yeah,
continuing to ring there. Let me see if I can.
But since I'm controlling the call, I'm the only one who can bring one in.
All right. I don't know if you want to bring him in, and I'll just finish this little bit of a story.
You can try and bring him in. He is, but he's going to have to add me on Skype.
Okay. Well,
I just sent him resend a request to him.
Okay. All right. Yeah. He might not have that. So what we can do. Do you want to try and bring him in now? And
I just sent him a request. I can't do anything until he answers the request.
Okay. Well, I'll just finish it. It's like just a couple of seconds with this story. And what I might have to do is actually call him on the phone and just tell him what you've done.
He just accepted me.
Oh, brilliant. That's great. He didn't know how to do much with the computer before we began working, and then we had to learn. But anyway, just to finish that tiny bit of the story off, the bike is gone, nowhere to be seen. And suddenly he turns around and there are the people with his bike. The space people, as he calls them. So they return his bike. They don't tell him how they got it or anything like that. And because of the time, he just rushes off. And the next thing he knows, they're gone. And he totally forgets about that incident until he's 44.
He has joined us.
Hi, Bill.
Welcome, Bill.
Hello,
Bill, how are you feeling?
A little bit better, yeah. Sorry, I did hear your phone calls, but I was so ill I couldn't get out of bed. I was lying there. I just couldn't get up.
Listen, I'm really impressed that you've joined us. I really didn't expect you to be able to pull yourself together. Well, I think we're most fortunate, folks, to have Mr. Brooks with us.
She's been doing an awful good job.
I've just been relating the contact story with the Nordics. So I just finished it up where they had your bike and you beetled off to get your sister.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I did hear the last little part of what you said. Sorry, I wasn't ready to start with. I did feel pretty ill.
I know. Well, anyway, great to have you here, and just be here for as long as you feel you can, because I just think there's nothing like hearing the story from the person themselves, and so this is great that you've got Bill to hear some of the story.
It sounds like you've had a fascinating life.
Very. I think I've lived about 20.
Yeah, he really has. I was just saying that you'd had a heck of a life, and we hadn't gone into much else. I just did an intro about Amash and the ET Newsroom, and then just kind of really launched into the story. And I was just going to pick it up on a chronological level, but I don't know if the guys want to ask you any questions themselves, because they have the press release that I sent out. So that will give some, ideas. So I don't know what you want to do, guys, how you'd like to.
You're doing great. I'm enjoying listening to it. Like I said earlier, and when I got you to come on, that we really didn't have no clue about this, and it was just what I read was fascinating. We've gotten a couple of contactees like this in the past here in the United States, but I've never seen one so intensely in the UK before. That's what intrigued me.
Yeah, and I think that's the case, but there really are some amazing experiences here as well. But anyway, Bill, I don't know whether this, I was just thinking that maybe, unless the guys have got some questions for you or anybody else have, I don't know if you have questions coming in, whether you might like to start talking about the army, joining the army, because there's some strange, weird stuff went around that. Or if you want to fill in a couple of the childhood areas, I haven't talked about the Rosicrucians, and I haven't talked about the Men in Black in the car. It's the only, second time he went to school for a few months.
Going to John's, yeah.
Yeah. Because, I think these are just very intriguing drop information to, that adds to the intrigue and mystery of your life, which is,
Personally, I'd like to, the only time that I actually remember the whole incident is Abingdon. And that's the only time I remember the whole thing, which, inside the ship and all that. All the other abductions, it's being taken. I know I've been taken, and I know I've been brought back. But the middle part's missing. So, would you mind if I tell the Abingdon one? Because that's the only one that I actually remember.
No, that sounds fine. When I read it there, it sounded real interesting.
What's the symbolism of Abington?
Well,
when I had the download, as we call it, when I was 44, that memory came back whole. But the rest of the memories came back as well. But the only one that I retained for a couple of years was the memory of Abingdon. And I believe for that couple of years that I'd only ever been taken once by accident. And then as the memories trickled back through, I realised that I'd been taken since I was 3. And if I hadn't have been taken after I was 44, after the download, as we call it, I wouldn't have believed myself. But because I carried on being abducted right up until 4 years ago, about 3 to 4 years ago, I had to believe it. And then when I started checking my own story, I had to believe it. I checked back on people, and it made me believe myself, because I didn't believe myself at first. I thought I'd gone mentally insane. I really thought I was insane. Or it was just one abduction,
Yeah. Well, what it was, just to bring a tiny little bit of clarity there, is, first of all, the Abingdon incident. We call it the Abingdon incident because Abingdon is a place near Oxfordshire in England where Bill was when the event happened. So that's what Abingdon is. And secondly, also, Bill had an incredible torrent, a veritable tsunami of information in a download aged 44. And from that torrent of information and memory recall, the Abingdon incident was the one that stuck with him like glue. The others kind of dissipated over the hours, like as if through some cosmic plug hole, only to be recalled and remembered over the next 20 years, and even as we've written. So Abingdon is this incredible memory of an abduction, which is one of the most incredible abduction stories I've heard, because it involves, well, quite a lot of interesting factors. But Bill, why don't you take that story away, because it is truly amazing.
Yeah, it takes a while, this story. That's why I said this one, because to try and relate all the different items in the book, it is very difficult, because I keep going wrong myself, because there's so much happened in my life. Things sometimes get jumbled.
Yeah.
I imagine other abductees have said the same thing. I've never spoke to any other abductees, but I should imagine there's others like me. I should imagine. Who get a jumbled memory of really what, as you know, as we were writing the book, I was having to go backwards and forwards sometimes, because I was saying, I've missed this, I've missed that, I forgot that, I forgot this.
Yeah.
And that's
well, look, let's pick up, Bill, on the Abingdon event whilst you're feeling okay with us, and just I think if you tell us why you were at Abingdon, you were doing a job, and perhaps just what that job was, just to give people a little lead in.
Yeah. I worked for an agency at that time. I hadn't got a job as such, but I was playing with the group as well. So I didn't have to work all the week. Weekends I worked with groups, bands, you know, as a guitarist, only sort of semi-pro, and I used to work for an agency in a place called Dudley in the West Midlands in England.
As a driver?
As a driver, yeah, sorry, yeah, as a driver. And I was given the job of delivering cookers in a place called Southampton and a place called Evesham, which is 100 miles apart, something like that. I'm not really sure. I haven't got a map. But I picked the cookers up. Now, remember the days I'm talking about, because there's a discrepancy in days here when this happens. On the Monday morning, at about 7 to 8:30, I picked up a load of cookers that were already loaded in the van for me. The van was a high top Renault, I think, a Renault van, I think it was, high top.
A Renault Traffic.
It was a Traffic, yeah, sorry, yeah, that's how my memory works.
And it was white.
Yeah, it was white, yeah. We'll realise that as the story goes on. I picked the cookers up at about 7:30 in the morning, on the Monday morning, and I delivered Southampton. I went down to Southampton, which took me probably the driving and the delivery, with the delivering all day. I finished probably about 9 o'clock on the evening, 9 to 8:30 on the evening. So I started making my way back to Evesham, where the next day I'd got the rest of the deliveries to do, the last of the deliveries to do. I came to Abingdon, and I thought I'll stay here the night instead of going home, which was quite a way, and go back to Evesham. I thought I'll spend the night here. As an ex-soldier, I'll sleep anywhere. You know, I'll just dust down wherever I want to. I went to a shop, what we call a fish and chip shop, and where you get a meal. You can get a meal, coffee. I got a meal with coffee, and I parked on the main road, and a wagon went past, a lorry went past, and shook the van. And I thought, I'm not sleeping here. I won't be able to go to sleep. So I went and found a dirt track. I know this sounds crazy. I went and found a dirt track. I could see a dirt track, and I thought, I'll go up there. Well, at first I didn't know I was parked by a house, but it was pitch dark, absolutely black, dark. And but as I was driving towards the field that I'm about to talk about, I saw I thought I saw a Christmas tree in the field, sparkling lights, looking like a Christmas tree. But as I got closer to it, it was more like a Catherine wheel. Now, a Catherine wheel is a spinning firework. I mentioned this last night, didn't I, Joanne? And the guy there said he knew what I meant.
Yes, yeah, it's just a firework that spins and makes a noise, and yeah, I think people have a good idea.
There was no noise though. I didn't hear a noise with it, but it was spinning like a Catherine, what we call a Catherine wheel. And the sparks that flew off it, at a distance, it looked like a Christmas tree, but when I got close to it, it looked like a Catherine wheel. I took no notice of this really. It went out anyway, and I thought, oh, that's gone. And so I started to I moved over to the passenger side of the vehicle, which in our country is on the left side, and the field was on my left-hand side. And I was just watching the field, and things like spotting lights started going around the field, and I could see rabbits run everywhere, which I didn't take really that much notice of. I just thought maybe it was a chopper, helicopter or something. Maybe the police, I don't know, just spotting the field. And I took no notice of that really. Finished eating my supper. Then this stopped. And the next thing I see is a triangle of light, I call it. Like a triangle of light. Oh, sorry, I must say before, I did the same last night. I forgot about the cows.
Well done.
I nearly forgot again. All the cows that were in the field went to the bottom of the field into a corner. I don't know if they were spread all over the field to start with, but when I noticed them, they were all in the bottom of the field in the corner, all together. But as I looked again, when these spotting lights stopped and the triangle went over, came into sort of the middle of the field, I should say, I could see that all the cows were underneath the light all together in the middle of the field instead of being at the bottom. And I didn't see them move. I didn't see any of them move at all. Then I saw a cow. I was just in the middle of finishing my supper at that time, and I was just about to drink my coffee. I saw the cow going into the triangle, going upwards. I thought it was farmers, and they must have had something around it to pull it up or something. I'm not a farmer. I knew nothing about farming at all. There was no farms in my area. It was just countryside. And except for one, there was one farm which was a couple of miles away, but the only thing they ever grew was caught in this one field that I talked about. Well, I haven't talked about it yet. It's in the book. Where I was inside a crop circle. Anyway, I've digressed again. As the cow went up into the light, it was sort of halfway up, just going into the light, and it was screaming like a horse. But I've never heard a horse scream, but I would imagine a horse screaming like it, not a cow. I'd imagine it would be a horse. As that happened, I just finished my meal that I was eating, and I just drank some coffee from a mug that I'd got from the shop, and I went to have a cigarette, and as I struck the match to light the cigarette, I hadn't got a lighter. I used a match. I struck the match. As I struck the match, it went completely dark. The triangle went out. Everything went completely dark, and I thought, good. The farmers have finished what they're doing. I hope they don't move me on. I thought I'll settle down and go to sleep now. But I was sitting on the passenger side. But as the lights went off completely, it went complete darkness, I was listening to the radio. I was actually listening to Memories like the corners of my mind. You know that one. I was listening to that. Beautiful song. I love it. And the radio went completely haywire, squelchy, I don't know what you call it. It sort of went haywire, went off channel, all over the place, you know, as they do. So I'd got my feet on the driver's, which is the right-hand side in our country. I've got my feet on the driver's seat, and my head underneath the dashboard, trying to sort out the radio, trying to figure out why it was gone all squelchy. And as I was doing that, I don't know what happened to the radio. I don't remember whether it stopped or not. But everything lit up. The whole inside the vehicle, outside the vehicle, in like an orange light, like an orange. I called it like a jelly light. It seemed thick, the light. But as I started to lift my head up, which was on the left-hand side, as I started to lift my body up and my head up, on the one side of the screen and the one window on the left side, I could see what I thought looked like. I mean, it sounds crazy, but the Leaning Tower of Pisa, with different mirrors, glass mirrors, all pointing in, hundreds of them on this thing, all pointing in different directions. So you couldn't really see anything. Looked like some kind of masking device. I think about now, it could be a masking device of some form. It looked like all mirrors anyway on this structure. And as I came further up, my rear view mirror was in front of my eyes. but behind me was a dark screen, a dark window with darkened glass in the back. So when I looked in the mirror, directly into the mirror, I could see the glass behind me, but what I could see was aliens. If they are aliens, I mean, I'm saying they're aliens. I should imagine they are. I'm seeing them. I thought they were in the back of the van. But as I lifted my head further up and got into the driving position, straight in front of my face was three alien faces, almost on the glass itself, as though they were stuck. If they had noses, their noses would have been on the glass, but they hadn't got any noses. It was like they had two holes where the nose should be, as such. And what they looked like, they had large black eyes, where everybody's heard this anyway. Large black eyes, hardly any ears. I think there was lumps, but I'm not 100% sure. It was an egg-shaped type head with a very small mouth, very small, very like a little slit, like not really a mouth, just a little slit. No lips or anything like that, just a slit. I looked behind them, and what I saw behind them was I saw in this orange light that was all around me to start with. It was then in front of me, behind these alien faces. It was behind them, and I saw like tubes of glass or light with, at first it looked like snow coming down. Then it looked as though inside these glass tubes or light tubes, whatever you want to call them, it looked like a jigsaw puzzle falling. And then when these jigsaw puzzles, I call them, hit the ground as such, they seemed to change into these greys. I didn't see them very well because I was too busy with three faces in front of me. But behind that, there was a wood about probably 200 yards away. And I couldn't see them very well, but I could see them in the woods walking towards me and the ship, which was in between me and them, walking towards the ship. The next thing that happens is, and this was really quite frightening in a way, but I'm not the type of person to be frightened of things. I have been in a couple of times in my life, but I think I've had need to be. But I don't get frightened. I'm not very easily frightened by anything. Their heads came through the glass, and it was as though the glass had turned to like a watery substance. What would you call it, Joanne?
A bit like cling film, a little bit
cling
like
film, yeah, but watery as well. I can't explain it. Like wet. It seemed wet. I forgot to tell you this. I remember things as I'm going along sometimes. But it came through, and the most frightening part of it, the one that was in the middle of these three alien faces, I call them, his face came through, and he was nearly touching my face. He came that close to my face. And then the other two, I can't remember which way around, but I think it was the one that the right came first, on the one side of my head, and the other one came the other side of my head. So I'd got one in front of my face and one each side of me. No noise, nothing like that. And then I went through the next thing I know, I'm going through the glass, or plastic, or whatever you want to call it now, because it didn't look like glass anymore. But when it came through, the rest of the glass seemed okay. On the sides, the glass seemed fine, it was exactly the same. But then I went through the glass, and I was going up into, as I was going up into the ship, they seemed to be all the way around me. I don't know how many, I haven't got a clue how many there were, but they seemed to be all around me.
We got a break coming up in about 30 seconds to a minute, so I want to make sure you remember where you're at.
Oh, lovely. Joanne will remind me anyway, won't you, Joanne? You'll remind me. I think I can remember anyway.
Yeah. Don't
As soon as
worry.
the music starts, we'll be going to break. So it'll be any time.
I'm sorry, I haven't got any names. I don't know what your names are.
Oh, I'm a Mad Painter and Smart Caddy.
What's your name though? I can't call you the Mad Painter, can I?
Oh, well, yeah, most people do, but my name's Thomas Becker.
What do people call you, Tom?
Yeah, or
Tom.
Painter usually.
Sorry?
Or Painter usually.
Oh, right. It sounds a bit crazy calling me the Mad Painter, doesn't it? You know.
Well, I've been known for that for years on the internet, so.
I can understand that. I can understand it because I must be called Mad by now. Mad Spaceman or something, that was called me or something.
Just before we hit the break, I tell you what's really interesting too is also that Bill didn't mention was that there were lots of molten drops coming down from this orangey light as well.
Well, that's strange.
And
Yeah.
we'll hear about that perhaps after the break, because that actually made an impact on the van itself.
It was like being
And
inside a foundry. That's how I explained
Yeah.
it, Joe. Like being inside a foundry and molten metal. It was like
Yeah.
molten metal dropping on the van.
yeah, and also when you were describing the coalescing again of the greys, it was a bit like a Star Trek moment, in their transporter
Yeah, well,
device.
yeah.
So, I mean, really,
I'm not
very
a Star Trek fan or anything, I'm not a Star Trek fan. I mean, I have watched it a few times. I think it's silly, but it's interesting but silly.
Yeah.
If you really encounter them, you find all these TV programs and films silly.
There's our break. And remember, we are totally listener supported. You should come down to the homepage, which is www.freedomslips.com, and check out offers we got for donations. We got the archives for $5 a month. I mean, there's between 80 and 90 hosts. You couldn't listen to all the shows. $5 a month, you can't beat that. Plus, we got other offers. We got survival documents, 900 documents for $50, and EMP proof bullet for computer, and you just can't beat some of the things. Mark, I'm pretty much enjoying what I'm hearing about this show. That book sounds all interesting.
It's very thought provoking, and Bill, I was wondering, does your case seem like it has any kind of connection to the Rendlesham Forest case?
No.
Okay.
No.
But
not as I can see.
But Bill, having said no, and that is correct, why don't you just tell them that tiny snippet about those guys, the army guys, and Rendlesham? That's really interesting.
Well, I met. I don't know what his name is. I met one of the Rendlesham guys, and I spoke to him outside. He was doing a talk in my own town, a place called Stourbridge in the Midlands, and I travelled from Wales down to see him, just to actually talk to the guy. And he told me to be careful when I told him who I was with and what had happened.
I think that was Larry Warren. I was actually meaning the other story.
Sorry,
with the special forces guys. The special forces guys, and they were into the woods every night.
Oh, the Paras.
Yeah, the Paras. Yeah, because also Bill did the special forces training as well when he was in the army. He didn't continue on with them, but he did the special forces training, as I said. So it kind of it's like, brothers know one another. So anyway, Bill, pick up that story, because just whilst they mentioned Rendlesham, this is a tiny little snippet that is just so interesting.
I'd actually forgot about this. Now this is a story that I believe it to be true. So I can't see why the guy would lie. I don't know how I encountered these. The 7 guys in the parachute regiment. I'm not too fond of the parachute regiment after what they did in Northern Ireland, but these guys were ex-soldiers, so we spoke, and they were into this. And they were sleeping in Rendlesham Forest, camping out in there, just to see what was happening there. And they said that things were happening, and they invited me down to start. When they found out who I'd been with and that I was one of their type, they invited me down to stay with them. But at the time I couldn't, because I was on summer season.
And they were also recording on computer, weren't they? They were writing reports of what they would seen.
Yeah. I was just coming to that. Sorry. What they said was they'd got one guy who was documenting everything they were seeing on computer, however they do it on computer. And I found the one day I found him, and he said, "We can't talk anymore." And I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because we found the guy that was putting all the information onto his computer. They found him dead, and his computer completely wiped." And he says, "I can't talk anymore." And that was the last time I ever heard anything from him. But I don't know what happened to him, or as I said to Joanna, I mean, whether it's true or not, I don't really know, but I don't know why they'd lie. I can't see them. It was a lie, you know.
I just thought it was just a very interesting vignette, because there's stuff like this left, right, and center, and it does all feed into this related subject. And if the guy just died, okay, I mean, why would they tell a lie? Why would they tell a silly story? Just having invited Bill along, so none of that makes sense. So I also take it at face value as a true story, and you just have to wonder, this, honestly, researching this, like Carla Turner and Phil Schneider and those people who died for the sake of their research, it can be a dangerous business. And, really, if you just push a few buttons, you can find yourself on the wrong side of, the life force, if you like, prematurely.
Well, we got Smithsonian Men in Black after us.
Really?
We do stuff about ancient history all the time.
Okay. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. So anyway, Bill, that was just all that little vignette was, but I just thought it's just so interesting.
Well, when we went to break, he was talking about going up into a UFO.
You're talking about the Abingdon incident, and you've just gone through the windscreen.
I can pick up on that if you want.
Okay.
Do you want me to pick up
It was getting interesting. I hated to interrupt you.
Oh yeah, don't worry. I mean, I'm getting used to it now. I've done a couple of shows, and I know that we have to have a break. It's just my mind sometimes wanders off in all different directions. I think I've got too much on my mind. What was falling on the van? If anybody has ever seen a foundry or worked in a foundry, it was like molten metal falling onto the van. I've worked in a foundry myself. That's why I related to that before I went in the army. And as this molten metal fell on, that's when I went through the screen. And as I went into the ship, I was upright. I couldn't move. I couldn't move my eyes. I couldn't move anything, but I was upright. I was standing upright. And I went up into the ship upright. And when I got into the ship, as I said, I was actually static. I couldn't move my eyes. I couldn't move my body. I was just floating, walking, floating forward. But any soldier will tell you this, any ex-soldier will tell you this who's been in any kind of combat. Your eyes get used to, even though you're looking forwards, they get used to noticing things each side and upwards and downwards. You still notice things, even though you can't see it properly. It's noticeable. You see movement. If you see movement, you turn your head. But I couldn't turn my head on this occasion. I couldn't turn my head to look at the movements. But on the left-hand side, I could see what looked like rows of jail cells going upwards in a row, probably 3 or 4. I'm not exactly sure how many. As I say, I couldn't see too well, but I could see things moving, and they looked to be alive. I couldn't see what they looked like, but they looked to be alive. I don't know if you can understand this. It's difficult to explain. Then, as I went past these rows of jail cells, I was turned. I didn't see anything. I couldn't see anything to my right. As I turned and went through a big opening. That's all I can say. I went through a large opening, and the next thing I know, I'm lying on a couch type thing. I'm just laying there, and I still can't move. I'm still stuck in that position, but I can see downwards as I'm lying down. I can see in front of me a bit, and in front of me, I could see like an oval-shaped doorway. There was no door, but just an oval-shaped opening. I call it a doorway into another room, where the cow that I saw being taken up through the triangle, it was lying on a very large, I don't know, table. I don't know what to call it. A very large thing. And they were moving their hands. And as they moved their hands, they rolled this cow out of the ship. And I without touching it, it rolled out. And I thought I was going to die. I knew the cow was dead. I don't know how I knew, but I knew it was dead. And I thought, now I'm next. Now I'm going to die. But when I thought that, a grey came over. Where he came from, I think he came from that room, but I'm not 100% sure. Came over and he put his hand. This is how I know what the hands look like. He put his hand on my chest and said, whether he said it with his mouth or with his mind, I'm not sure. He said, no, you're human. In other words, no, you're not going to die, you're human. He said, no, you're human. You're a human. And then he went away, and then they came round me. Next thing I know, they're around me. And the next thing I know, there's a girl sitting on top of me in a sexual position, but no, nothing like that. She was just sat there. Very, very thin girl, long hair. And then the next thing I know, she's gone. This seemed like, to me, seconds. All this was happening so fast that it was hard to catch what was actually going on. But the next thing I know, I've got a burning sensation up my nose on the right-hand side. It burnt up my nose, up towards my eye. It was burning. And then there was a warm sensation, hot, warm sensation in my ear, as though something had gone into my ear. Then I saw a drill, or something like a drill, coming down towards my eye. And I don't remember anything after that. That was it. I must have passed out. I must have done. Or something. Or they knocked me out. I don't know. Next thing I know, I'm in the same room or another room that's changed. It's a different type of room. It's changed. And there's a like a video screen in the middle of the room, just hanging there, just floating there, hanging there. And I see on it, I see a baby being born, and I see a war. I don't know which war, but I saw a war. All wars are the same, people being killed, stupidity. And the next thing I know, I'm now ready to go out of the ship. And I'm sitting on a like a bench type thing at the side of this ship. And the girl's sitting about 4 feet from me, 4 or 5 feet from me. I'm saying feet because I'm old. You use meters and the things, don't you? And there's a big, large, round window structure And I asked the girl, I could see water out there, and I think I could see fish as well, large fish. And I asked the girl that was a few feet away from me, it was the other side of this window, I call it. I asked her if we were at the bottom of the sea or the river, and she said the sea. The structure of this window, it was round, but it didn't seem to have any glass in it. But the water came in slightly, like if you overfilled a cup, gravity. The water came slightly in, but it didn't come into the...
Almost like some kind of force field was holding it just back, eh?
Yeah, like gravity. Like we get gravity holding when we overfill a cup.
I think we've got the idea.
Yeah, you know what I mean. You know what I mean, don't you? I've got a cup in front of me, and I'm thinking you can see it. I think I've gone crackers. Then the girl said something to me, and I know what I replied to her, but I don't know what she asked me. I can't remember what she asked, but I know my replies. And my reply was, I've got a family, I've got a mother, they'll wonder where I am. So I believe they might have asked me if I wanted to go with them or something, but I'm not sure of that. Now I'm leaving the ship, and as I come out to the back of the, well, I'm calling it the back, I don't know, it could have been anywhere. As I come out the ship, I'm floating down towards Earth, and this girl's next to me at the time. As we start, oh, by the way, one thing I forgot to mention, Joanne, the other night on the last show, this girl, she looked Asian with blonde hair.
Yeah, you did mention it actually, just not tonight. Yeah, that's interesting.
I forgot to mention it the other night.
I see on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I've just this is the problem with my memory. It's terrible. You know, I've got a terrible memory. As I say, I've got a terrible memory. I forgot where I am.
You're coming down off the ship, and she was standing next to you.
I'm getting it back together now. I'm sort of floating down, and as I'm floating down now, I remember forgetting. I know this sounds crazy. I remember forgetting. As I was coming down, I thought to myself, wait till I tell my mother about this, because my mother was fascinated by the Betty and Barney Hill caper that went on in '63, I think it was. And she was fascinated
61.
by it. Was it 61, was it? Me and my mother used to argue about it. I told her there was no God, no aliens, nothing. And I used to argue with her. We used to argue all the time. Only jokingly argue. My mum, we enjoyed each other's company. And we used to argue about these things, God and aliens and stuff like that. And my mother always said she wanted to meet these people and be abducted, she'd have a different idea if I could talk to her now. But she's passed away, bless her. And as I was thinking, wait till I tell my mother about this. As soon as I thought, wait to tell my mother about this, I thought, tell her what? And it had disappeared from my memory. I remembered all this at 44. And then I turned, then I was, the girl had seemed to have disappeared. And I thought, wait till I tell my wife about this. And I thought, as soon as I thought, wait till I tell my wife about this, I thought, tell her what? It had all disappeared from my memory. And then I was back on the ground, I call it, back on the ground. I was standing next to my van by the driver's door, thinking that I must, because I had no idea what had happened to me by now, I was thinking I need to go for a pee, which you normally do in the morning. I thought I just woke up. I can't remember getting out of the vehicle or anything like that, but I naturally assumed I just woke up and got out of the vehicle for a pee. And I then saw the house next to me. I forgot to talk about that during the abduction, Joanne. I saw that roof on the opposite side of the van. I could see the roof of the house on the opposite side of the van. But I just thought I'd mention that because I forgot to mention it. Sorry, where was I, Joanne? Do you know?
Yeah, you saw the house, so you were about to go round to the other side of the van.
That's right. Sorry, yeah, I lost it. I went round to the back of the van, on the other side of the van where the field was, to have a pee because I didn't want to. Could have been someone in the house watching. And when I got round to the other side of the van, the cow was there, the cow that I saw in the ship, and it had all bits missing off it. The half the jaw was gone. If I think they left the tongue. I'm not sure. They could have took half the tongue. I'm not sure, but the tongue was hanging out. At the back of it, there was a hole where I suppose the liver or kidneys would be. I'm not really sure. All the teeth had gone. There was nothing left. I didn't even know if it was a cow or a bull. You couldn't tell because everything had gone. You know, everything down there had completely gone. But I should imagine it was a cow. And I stupidly, I thought, I've got to get out of here. They'll think I've done that. You know, they'll think I've done that to the cow. Stupidly, how could I do that? You know, but I got paranoid and thought, I've got to get out of here. So I drove up to the main road, which is a dual carriageway in our country, we call it. I don't know what you call it. And I saw myself coming towards myself. So I carried on to Evesham to do the next day's work.
Bill, can I just interject just a little, just to really make sense of what you just said, because this is a really huge thing. Bill, it's true what he's just said, but just to get that in your mind, he saw an identical van on the other side of the road traveling toward him in the opposite direction with a driver looking exactly like him. Now, this does play into the story a little bit later on, but Bill has had so many either time or dimensional slips. It's just unreal, and this is a major one. So, sorry, Bill, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, thanks, Joanna. I had forgotten. I do try and rush the story sometimes. And as you know, when we did the book, we had to go over a few times to get it right. And as I'm telling the story now, sometimes I forget little bits.
Yeah, don't worry. Anyway, it's just for clarity, so people have a better idea of the process that you're going through.
That's a fascinating story.
Sorry, Tom.
Oh, you have a fascinating story.
Oh, it's amazing, and you know you've only heard a little bit. Anyway, Bill. So look, you're on your way to Evesham. You're going to go and deliver those cookers. So
I delivered all the cookers in Evesham. It took me a couple of hours, and I finished. I got back to the firm at about 3:30 in the afternoon. And when I got back to the firm, now I believe Tuesday, because I'd spent the night out, I believe. And we're now talking on the Tuesday. Well, I believe it's Tuesday. So we get back to the firm, and the foreman, boss, I don't know what you call it in your country, said, "Where are the cookers?" And I said, "I've delivered them." He said, "You couldn't have done. You only left this morning." And I said, No, I left yesterday morning. And he said, "We don't work on Sunday here." I said, "Not Sunday, Monday." He said, No, it's Tuesday today. And I said, "No, it's not, it's Monday." Sorry, I said, "No, it's Tuesday." I said, "I left yesterday." He said, "No, you didn't." There was an argument. Then he asked me again where the cookers were, and I said, "I've delivered them." He said, "You couldn't have done." And he went into another office. I could see him through the window of the office, and he was on the phone, and he was looking at me at the same time. I knew he was talking about me. I thought they were ridiculing the note that I'd given him for the night out, because all drivers do the same. We get a note from anywhere, and we get £15 on top of our wages for the night out, as though we've had a hotel. So I got a false slip for an hotel. You know, I gave it to him with a false number on, you know, a false telephone number, because normally they don't check. He didn't check on it either. He was actually phoning to find out if the cookers had been delivered. He came back to me and he said, "You've got someone working for you, and we think it's your brother." And I said, "Well, my brother can't work. He's completely disabled," which he is. And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I've delivered the cookers." "What do you mean they're being delivered. I've delivered them. Well, you've got somebody working for you because he's delivering now. So I was in the office at the same time as I was delivering cookers in Evesham. That's incredible. That just blows your mind. So I'm thinking that they're just trying to stop paying me the night out money. That's all I thought. I didn't think anything strange whatsoever. So I got home and my wife was ready to go out with her sister. And when I got home, she said, I thought you were staying out the night. And I said, I did stay out the night. She says, you only left this morning. I said, you're as crazy as those people at work. Is it a leap year? Because I just could not work out in my mind how this could be happening. So my wife was getting ready to go out with her sister, and she was still there. And I went into the bathroom because I've got a problem with my nose. It's a sinus problem, and when I'm out all day, my nose gets, in the summer, it was summer, my nose gets full of pollen, and I have to get rid of it. And the only way I can do it is to wash it out with warm water. I don't know if anyone else does that. Some people may. I know my daughter does it. She has the same problem as me. And so while I was washing my nose out with warm water, this blood started to pour from my right-hand side of my nose, where the burning was in the ship, and out in the blood comes what we now know must have been an implant. But I looked at it; it looked like a 2-2 bullet. Most of you guys will know what a 2-2 bullet looked like. You know, the 2-2, small, very small. And I thought it looked like a 2-2 bullet. And I looked at it, and I said to my wife, I said, what do you think that is? And she said, I don't know. I said, well, it looks like a 2-2 bullet to me. And she said, could you have been shot up the nose in Northern Ireland? You know, which was really funny, really. You know, I said, yeah, probably. There'd probably be some brain damage as well. You know what I mean. But I forgot about. Well, I sort of forgot about it. I thought, right, I put it into my shave on top of my shave in a soap dish on top of my shaving cabinet. And I thought, I'll look at that tomorrow, you know, have a good look at that tomorrow, because I was a bit tired and I wanted to get a drink, and I wanted to relax and I wanted to get a bath, you know. So that night I left it, and then I got my dog, I took my dog out, but the night air went up my nose and it started to give me some problems, even though it was a warm night. It had cooled down a little bit, and any cold air that touched inside of my nose was giving me some problems, you know. So I went back home, and on the evening we went to bed, and as I lay in bed, we lived in where we lived. It was ground floor anyway. It was what they call a masonette in our country. It's a ground floor masonette, and the garden was was next to the bedroom, our garden. I saw lights, and then I saw greys, which I believe to be greys, rushing past the window. I tried to wake my wife. She would not wake up. She just would not stir at all. It was as though she was dead. And she hadn't really had much to drink. She wasn't, you know, she hadn't been out drinking that much. I couldn't wake her though. I could not wake her. I kicked her and everything. I couldn't wake her. And the next thing I hear is our bathroom was next to the bedroom, as well as the window. In front of us was the bathroom next, you know, the next room was the bathroom. And I could hear them shuffling like 100 miles an hour, just shuffling around. And the next thing I know, I'll lose it. I'm asleep. That's it, gone. And I wake up the next morning, completely forgot about this, what had happened, because that was kept happening to me. Every time anything happened, I just completely forgot it until I was 44. So I look in the bathroom the next day, for this what we now know as an implant, and it had disappeared, completely disappeared.
So they'd come back, they'd nicked it back.
Yeah, they did. Well, it's the only thing I can think that could have happened. So then I start getting trouble with the tooth. So I go to the doctor. Sorry, I go to the dentist. I thought a filling had dropped. No, the next day I forgot about this. The next day I thought a filling had dropped out. It was an really odd shaped thing. I've drawn it in the book.
It's a bit like a disc, small disc.
Yeah, with things coming off it. It's weird. I'd never seen a filling in my life, and I didn't know what a filling looked like. So I just took it I looked at it in my hand and I thought, oh, my filling's dropped out. Because it looked like metal. I thought it must be a filling. So I went to the doctors and he looked at it and he said, no, your filling's still there. But why have you got 2 drill holes through the next tooth to it? And I said, I haven't got a clue. And he said, it looked like a laser had done it. He said, we haven't got that technology. It looks like a laser. And he said, have you been to America? Well, I don't know whether you guys have got that technology in America at that time. I don't know if you got it now. But he said there was 2 laser holes through my tooth. And he asked me to go back so he could check it again. And I said, well, is my filling okay? He said, yep. Okay, I'm off to the pub then. See ya. And I didn't go back. I went to the pub. You know, that's where I go when I've got time. I think that's about it, Joanne, for that one, isn't it, really?
Yeah, but what did you lose? What was taken from you?
Yeah, what we found out a couple of weeks, it took me about a week to realise this, that my son Christopher had gone, my gold son Christopher off my, that I had. I don't know, gold or silver. It was gold or silver, I can't remember which.
I think he said it was silver.
Yeah, I think it was silver, yeah. But my gold ring had gone, my marriage ring. And that's why my wife noticed, where's your ring? She thought I'd thrown it away or something, or you know, maybe thought I'd sold it or something, I don't know. But they were missing, yeah, you know, and that caused me a few problems with the wife, you know.
So you were mugged. You were mugged by aliens.
Yeah, I was mugged by. I went to the police, but they didn't do anything about it.
What was the aliens' need for those? You know, the precious metals. Would Saint Christopher have sold to aliens?
I haven't got a clue. You'd have to ask them. I haven't got a clue. I did lose on another abduction. I lost 1/3 of a ton, just over 1/3 of a ton of phosphor bronze. It was what they call gunmetal, I think. It was a bearing for a ship. It was a ship bearing, and that disappeared off the back of my truck. I got the sack, in fact. So I was 4 hours late, and the metal had gone, and I couldn't explain anything.
Not only that, it was a massive piece, and also it would have been really expensive. Really expensive.
Yeah, it's a very expensive metal, phosphor bronze. It's called.
So these aliens, I'm telling you, hold on to your metals, folks. Well, I've had a copper dowsing rod taken, and so has a colleague of mine. and I had borrowed it as well, which was not that good. Oh dear me. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, this is it. I mean, Bill's stories, they just continue getting more and more bizarre. And Bill, was this the same incident where I'm getting a bit confused now with the stories, where you began to go grey, or was that the next instance?
Oh yeah, that was the occasion. I started. It took about 3 or 4 months, but I'm still the same now, in fact. But I've only got a slight bit of dark left on the one side of my chest. I have gone grey all over now, near enough. But I do have, I've still got black hair on the one side of my chest and completely grey on the other. But at this time, just after this, I went completely grey on the one side, except for my head. My hair did start to go grey a little bit on the one side, so I started to dye it to go on stage. You know, I used to dye my hair to go on stage because it was the one side had gone a bit grey, and it was getting greyer and greyer. But my body itself went grey on the one side. I'd got hair on my legs, hair on my chest. You know, normal bloke. You know, normal guy. But everything was grey on the one side, and it was the side of the sunburn because oh yeah, I forgot to mention that, didn't I?
Yeah, carry on. Tell them about that, because that is extraordinary too.
When I came back on that day, when I got home, my wife noticed this. I didn't notice it first. My wife noticed this, that I'd gone. I was sunburned on my left-hand side, which in our country, if you're a driver, you can only get sunburned on the right-hand side. But I was sunburned on the left.
So the question is Bill the same Bill, or is he in fact the other guy who was driving towards him? Which Bill are you, Bill?
Yeah, that's the question I asked myself. Was I dimensionally swapped because they messed up time? They messed the time up. I believe they can take you from any part of time and bring you back somewhere. With the experiences I've had, this is what I believe now. These are my beliefs. I've never listened to anyone else's beliefs. I've just got my own. It seems to me that they can take you out of a dimensionally, take you out of a time and put you back into another time if they want to. And I think they messed up. I think they meant to put me back at the right time and put me back the day before. That's what I believe. And I believe because of that, they had to swap me back around again.
So is that why you saw yourself?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's why.
I mean, we don't know exactly, but, you know, any hypothesis is probably a good one.
These are my thoughts. These are my... I'm the one that had the experiences, and I've never listened to anyone else's experiences. So these are my thoughts, you know. This is how I feel, if you know what I mean. These are my thoughts.
I just wanted to rule out, just a coincidence that someone looked like you, or, was it you seeing yourself through another dimension?
It could have been coincidence. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't, but it seems it seems a very big coincidence.
Okay, and so we've discussed a little bit about the reptilians and Nordics. Which ones are visiting you the most?
Well, they don't visit me now. This is when I was young. When I was very young, I was 10, between 10 and 11 when that happened.
We sorry to just butt in, but although I said that reptilians were mentioned, we haven't mentioned anything about what happened with them. We didn't even get to that bit.
Oh,
so,
right.
I mean, I don't know, you guys, we've got time, I think, about 15 minutes. I don't know whether you'd like to, because this is back when Bill was 10 years old, and within a very short space of time, really, isn't it? Between the Nordics, between you having that contact experience with the Nordics, and then you having this unbelievably bizarre experience with the reptilians on more than one occasion.
Yeah, I had. It was 2 occasions I had the reptilian thing. They actually dragged me out of a little hideout that I made.
Well, why don't you say what happened then? Because I mean, that is extraordinary.
Could I tell this story in 15 minutes? You know.
Yeah, go on. Give it a go. Give it a go.
Where do you want me to start? Do you want me to start from when the Nordics landed in the field? And
well, I've told the Nordic story, so I think how about if we say one of the things you love to do was to, your own company, and at this particular day you went fishing.
Oh yeah. So that's where we want me to start. When after that. Yeah.
I think so, and then you can go on to the hideout one afterwards if there's time.
Yeah. The the one day I was fishing in what we call the canal. I don't know what you've got there. It's in the book. There's a bridge. It's a small cutaway water. Anyway, I'm fishing there, and there's a bridge, and these 4 or 5 reptilians started to. Well, they came out of nowhere. They just seemed to appear. I didn't see them walk across the field where I'd had the experience with the Nordics. They came from that direction, but I didn't see them come out the field. I didn't see them walk across anything. I didn't see anything. All I saw was they came into view and started to walk down towards the bridge. Well, of course, it gave me a bit of a shock. And the next thing I see is one of them get into the water, and the next thing I see that he's right in front of my eyes, within a few feet of me.
I mean, he's within about 4 foot of you, isn't he?
Yeah, he's within a couple of feet of me anyway. I can't honestly swear to the exact distance.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what they look like?
Well, they were like browny green, like a greeny brown, scaly, largest scales at the top and smaller scales on the arms, and they had a small tail at the back as well, a small sort of reptilian tail, but not going to the ground, just a small one. They had large eyes. They had largest eyes, not like the alien eyes.
How tall were they?
Oh yeah, they were about, I'd say about 7 to 8 foot, something like that. 7 to 8 foot, between 6 and 8 foot. I'm not 100% sure, because looking at the bridge, I only saw him for a few seconds anyway. The next thing I know, this one's in the water and his eyes are staring straight at me, and all I could see was the top of the head, which was a scaly, and the eyes staring at me, and the next thing I know, sorry,
I was just going to say, and that was what you remembered of that a reptilian encounter, but other things continued on, didn't they, with the fishing?
Yeah, well, I seem to have lost time or something. The next thing I know, my fishing rod has been pulled up the bank of the canal. I'm sort of waking up and I'm thinking, what was that? I'd completely forgot about these reptiles. What was that? I only remember this at 44. I thought, what was that? So I went and fetched my fishing rod, and there was a fish on the end of the line, and it must have got stuck in weeds. It must have got stuck, the hook, it was in its mouth, got stuck in weeds. And when I got to it, when I actually got it out of the water, the one side of the jaw was completely ripped to pieces. Everything was gone near enough. It was just ripped. It must have really ripped itself to pieces trying to get itself off the hook while I was away, or if I was away. I mean, I've got no memory of what happened. I've got no idea of the time either, because I used to be down there all day, so I didn't really know how long I'd been away for if I was away, But that was that encounter,
So after you threw the poor old fish back and hoping it might survive, although you forgot, there was sort of an inkling of something in the back of your mind. That set you off on a trail of sort of becoming a bit of a sleuth, and you began trying to check for the strange sense of strangeness going on.
Yeah, well, what happened was I had 2 more encounters. There's a bridge. Well, you saw the bridges, Joanne, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I went with Bill to these locations, these major locations, and saw exactly the dimensions and what they looked like and everything. So, that was really important to do.
But there's a second bridge where that bridge was I've just spoke about. Just further down, we've got a river as well. We've got the canal running alongside a river, which is quite odd, really, in a way. But over the river, what we call the River Severn, there's a wood that goes upwards, a hill, a wooded hill. I was at the bottom of this wooded hill. We've missed the story. The problem is we've missed out the story of the axe and the...
Yeah, but I mean, I think if we just stay with the reptilian, we'll just have to do that because we're about to finish soon, aren't we?
Yeah, I know. It all fits together, doesn't it? But anyway, I'll try and tell the story without telling the other two stories with it. I know it's crazy. There's so many things happening all at the same time. I knew there was something very strange going on this hill because I'd already had 2 encounters on this hill. And with this other encounter, I thought there must be something up there. And I'd never been actually to the top of this hill before, up into the top of the wood. And when I got to the top of the wood, I found a field. And I could see from there the field where I'd met the Nordics. I could see it from where I was. And I saw reptilians walking up towards the wood on all fours sometimes. There was a steep bank and they were getting on all fours. And I saw them doing this. And so what I did on the night, one of the nights, I made myself a hideout in the middle of the wood where these, well, not in the middle of the wood, where I saw them go into the wood. And I thought, I'll wait for them. I'll see if I can see them again. And I saw them coming towards me. They got like orangey type eyes. Like.
Well, I think if we could, sorry, I was just going to say, if we can just set the scene a little bit, just to give people a sense of what you were leading up to doing. You'd built this little hideaway, which was really quite sturdy because you were used to being out in the woods and the fields, so you made it really well. And then back at home, so you left the hideout, went back home and did all the usual things at home, had your tea, all the rest of it. And then your family would send you off to bed early, but then you would escape out the window onto the little porch above the front door and leg it over to the fields. And so there you lay in waiting as it got darker, not really expecting or knowing what to expect. But you had a rude awakening, didn't you?
I didn't expect to see him, really. I mean, I thought maybe I'm going crackers, you know. I thought maybe it's my eyes playing tricks, you know, on me. And
again, you're still only around 10 or possibly 11. You're still not very old here.
No, I'm not 11. I'm still 10 because it didn't happen after my 11 plus exam. It was before that. I lay in wait for him, sort of inside this little, this thing that I'd made. You know, I made it out of sticks and twigs and leaves and all sorts. It was pretty good, actually. I was pretty good at it. I should have been Jungle Man or something. And I lay waiting for him, and I could see through the, you know, through my hideout. I could see through it, but I didn't expect they could see me. But as they came into the wood, they just stared straight at this hideout I'd made. And I don't know if it was 1 or 2. I mean, I think it was 2 of them, but it could have been, I'd just been one of them because they were pretty big and strong. I was dragged through the side of it, scratched all my arms to pieces as they dragged me through. And next thing I know, I'm standing by a gate with them. And then the next thing I know, I'm at home asleep underneath the hedge. And because this kept happening, I kept being found underneath the hedge at the front garden of my house. People would see me on the way to work asleep under the hedge. They sent me away to this horrible school. Said it was me sleepwalking with all the windows and doors locked. You know, clever. Yeah, that's about up to now. That's about it, isn't it? Yeah, and I'm losing track.
Yeah, that was the thing with the reptilians, but it was really up close and personal, and we don't know what came of that interaction. We just know that when they grabbed you from the hideout, that you were all scratched to pieces, so much so that the next day your mother noticed and said, what's that? What happened to you?
And I didn't know why I told her this because it wasn't true. But I told her I'd been scratched by the gooseberry bushes at the bottom of the garden. Well, don't ask me why. I don't even know why I said it.
Yeah.
Maybe,
but it's interesting. I know we've only got about sort of 4 minutes or so to kind of conclude, but this is just a tiny little bit of some of the stuff that Bill's been through. I mean, and I just want to flag up one event, and I'll just tell this really quickly, Bill. And this is when Bill was around about 9. He'd often be sent into town to get some shopping for his disabled brother, and maybe for the family, bandages and stuff for his brother, who was very badly physically disabled. And on this one occasion, he was stopped by 2 guys in black. They weren't men in black, as we know, but they were wearing black gear. And they spoke with, I think we've said American accents, Bill.
Yeah,
didn't we, on that?
American, yeah. They were
Yeah,
American.
and basically they told Bill that they were Rosicrucians. And anyway, the upshot of that meeting was that they ended up going to Bill's house and talking to the parents to ask them if they'd allow him to go to a club. Now, this is where, how is Bill being tracked and why? He's only 9 years old. So somebody somewhere knows about Bill and knows that he's about to have things happen and has already had things happen, even though he has no memory of it even at 9 years old. So he's allowed to go to this club, but they take him to a place which is actually the Royal Antediluvian Order of the Buffalo, or Royal Order of the Buffalo, because the Rosicrucians tell him that he can't join them just yet. So maybe he's just too young. But the interesting thing is about these guys is that Bill only spends a short time there because he'd already started smoking at 9 years old, and they weren't too impressed by that. But I think one of the reasons that Bill is still here is because he's got an iron will and no one's going to tell him anything. which has its positive thing. But what I wanted to say, Bill, was about what they used to get you kids to do when it was raining and you were all inside playing. Do you want to tell them what they...
Some strange games. I can't remember them properly, but they tried to make us remember a number, or get me or someone else to think of a number and see if we could match it, or try and make things move without our hands.
So they were getting you to do kind of things like get kinetic things, kinetically moving, mind reading, stuff like that.
And we get you to repeat the name of your book and where people can find it. We're about to get cut off.
Yeah, okie dokie. Well, it's 44, based on the true story, an ex-soldier's true story of lifelong encounters involving alien abduction. And it's on Amazon and Kindle. And it's Joanna Summerscales and Bill Brooks. And I run the ET Newsroom in the UK. And I'm trying to pull together some material from military personnel. So if there's any folks out there in the military who have had experiences, I don't mean experiences who've had military experiences, I mean military personnel, please get in touch. And thank you guys very much for this opportunity to get Bill and I to have a little chat on your show. Really nice to speak to you all.
Been a great show, and thank you for joining us. I hope you all enjoyed the show tonight, folks.
Thanks for having us.
Joanna and Bill.
Y'all have a good night.
Thanks very much.